Imagine being betrayed by the people you trust most, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery in a foreign land, and forgotten in a prison cell, yet destined to rule a nation. This was the life of Joseph, a young man whose faith, patience, and courage would carry him from the darkest trials of life to the highest office in Egypt. Long ago, in a land called Canaan, there lived a young man named Joseph. He was his father's favorite. He was gifted with dreams that spoke of greatness, but these very dreams sparked jealousy and hatred in the hearts of his own brothers. Joseph was betrayed, sold as a slave, and imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit. Joseph could have given up, but instead he trusted God's plan, remained faithful, and rose to become the second most powerful man in Egypt. Every step of Joseph's life reveals God's plan unfolding in miraculous ways. His story is one of hope, resilience, and the incredible power of faith in the face of life's darkest moments. Welcome to Bizarre Tales and History Documentaries, where we bring Bible stories to life exactly as they were written in the Holy Scriptures. Here we reveal the lessons, miracles, and timeless truths that continue to inspire generations. Stay with us, because Joseph's journey from prisoner to prime minister is a story of faith, courage, and God's unstoppable plan. Now, let's begin with the life of Joseph. Joseph was the son of Jacob, and from a young age he was clearly his father's favorite. Jacob loved Joseph more than his other sons and demonstrated this love by giving him a coat of many colors. The coat was a beautiful robe that symbolizes his special place in the family. But this favor sparked jealousy and hatred among his older brothers, who could not understand why Joseph was set apart and more cherished than they were. Joseph's life was further complicated by his extraordinary dreams. In these dreams, he saw himself in positions of authority where even his brothers and parents would bow before him. When he shared these visions with his family, instead of getting applause, praise, and admiration from them, he faced scorn and resentment, deepening the rift in the family. Despite the tension, Joseph remained faithful and continued to grow in character and integrity. Little did he know that these dreams, which caused so much conflict in his household, were actually the blueprint of God's plan for his life, a plan that would carry him through betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment to become a leader who would save nations. Joseph's brothers' jealousy had reached a boiling point. One day, when Joseph came to check on them in the fields, they saw an opportunity to rid themselves of their brother forever. They plotted against him, taking his beautiful coat of many colors and throwing him into a deep pit. Sitting in the pit, alone and helpless, Joseph could have despaired. Yet even in this dark moment, God's plan was quietly unfolding. The brothers, unable to bear the guilt or risk Joseph's dreams coming true, sold him to a group of Ishmaelite traders heading to Egypt. Joseph went from favored son to a prisoner in a foreign land in a single day. This betrayal marked the first step in a journey that would test Joseph's faith, patience, and character. Though his brothers acted with hatred, God's purpose was at work, preparing Joseph for a destiny far greater than he or anyone else could imagine. When the Ishmaelite traders arrived in Egypt, they sold Joseph to Potiphar, who was a high-ranking officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. Despite being a slave in a foreign land, Joseph's character and faithfulness immediately set him apart. God blessed him, and he quickly gained favor in Potiphar's household. Potiphar noticed that the Spirit of God was on Joseph because every work committed into his hand was prosperous. Joseph's diligence and integrity made him a trusted servant of Potiphar. Joseph pleased his master and found favor in his sight, and Potiphar, his master, made him his personal servant, which was like a promotion. So Potiphar put him in charge of his entire household, knowing that everything Joseph managed would succeed. His life, though far from home, was a testimony of obedience, hard work and God's guidance. Joseph became an overseer in Potiphar's house and was in charge of everything in his house, making him a superior above other servants who served before him. So Potiphar left everything he ever owned in Joseph's charge, knowing that they would succeed with him in charge. He didn't care about anything else and didn't need to pay attention to his businesses and house, except for the food he ate. However, Joseph's challenges were far from over. The Bible records that Joseph was a handsome boy and was very attractive in appearance. It happened that Potiphar's wife began to notice Joseph. She admired him from afar and tried to tempt him. Then came a time when she approached Joseph with a desirous and lustful look, and she said to him, "Come, lie with me." But he refused and said to her, "Madam, my master doesn't concern himself with anything in this house because he has put everything he owns in my charge. Even though I am in charge, he remains my master. He is not greater than I am, nor has he kept anything from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do this great evil and sin against God and your husband?" Joseph's statements revealed his commitment to stay loyal to God and Potiphar, his master, even when it meant risking his own freedom. Potiphar's wife didn't stop there. She continued to speak to Joseph persistently and attempted to lure him to lie with her, but Joseph didn't listen to her plea. So it happened one day that Joseph went into the house to attend to his duties as usual, and none of the other servants and men of the household were there in the house. Potiphar's wife, seeing an opportunity, grabbed Joseph by his outer robe and said to him, "Lie with me." But Joseph left his robe in her hand and ran outside the house. He knew the only way to overcome such sexual sin was to flee, just as the Bible records in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 18. Now, when Potiphar's wife realized that Joseph's robe was in her hand and Joseph himself had evaded her by running outside the house, she raised a false alarm. She cried out and screamed. Her cries attracted the men of the household who ran to check up on their master's wife. She said to them with tears in her face, "Look, your master has brought a young Hebrew boy into this household to mock and insult us. This Hebrew boy came to lie with me, and I screamed for my own safety. When he heard me screaming, he left his robe with me and ran outside." When Potiphar returned home that day after doing his official duties in Pharaoh's palace, his wife told him the same fake story. When Potiphar heard the words of his wife, his heart burned with anger. So Potiphar lay hold of Joseph and put him in the prison where Pharaoh's prisoners were kept. With one false accusation, Joseph found himself imprisoned.
Joseph's life took a dramatic turn when he was thrown into prison. He was falsely accused by his master's wife and stripped of freedom. Yet even in this dark place, God's favor was with him. The warden quickly recognized Joseph's integrity and made him responsible for the other prisoners and the management of the prison. While in confinement, Joseph's ability to interpret dreams began to shine. He accurately interpreted the dreams of Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker, predicting their fates with remarkable insight. Even behind bars, Joseph's wisdom and faith were evident, and his reputation began to grow. His period in prison was not wasted. Every trial, every hardship, and every moment of uncertainty was shaping Joseph into a man ready for God's greater purpose. His patience and trust in God would soon open the door to a destiny beyond imagination. Pharaoh, the king and ruler of Egypt, was troubled by dreams that no one could interpret. In one, 7 healthy cows were devoured by 7 gaunt and sickly cows. In another, 7 full ears of grain were swallowed by 7 thin and withered ears. He called for the magicians and all the wise men of Egypt and told them the 2 dreams he had, but no one could interpret the dreams to him. Since none of his advisors could explain the meaning to him, Pharaoh's spirit was troubled, and he became anxious and desperate for answers. It was then that the cupbearer remembered Joseph from prison. The cupbearer spoke of Joseph's ability to decode and interpret dreams. Then Pharaoh sent and called for Joseph, and Joseph was hurriedly brought out from his prison cell. Joseph shaved himself, changed his clothes, and made himself presentable, for he was to stand before Pharaoh. As he stood before the Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, Pharaoh said to him, "I had a dream no one could tell me the meaning, and I have heard so much about you that you can understand a dream and interpret it." Joseph answered him, "It is not in my power to interpret the dream. God will give you an answer to your dreams through me." So Pharaoh told Joseph the visions and dreams he had. Joseph revealed that the dreams were a warning from God. He told the Egyptian king that the two dreams have the same interpretation. The fact that the dream came twice to Pharaoh showed that the matter had been decided and established by God, and God would bring it to pass very quickly. He told the king what God is showing him, what he is about to do. The 7 good cows represent 7 productive years, which is the same as the 7 ears of grain. These 7 years of abundance would be followed by 7 years of severe famine, hardship, and hunger. But Joseph did not stop at interpretation. He offered a solution. Pharaoh was advised to store surplus grain during the years of plenty to prepare for the coming famine. Impressed by Joseph's wisdom, insight, and foresight, Pharaoh recognized the hand of God in him and decided to elevate him to a position of great authority. Joseph's faith, patience, and integrity had finally opened the door to the destiny he had seen in his youthful dreams. Joseph was appointed as the second in command over all Egypt. Joseph was given authority over the entire land, tasked with preparing the nation for the coming famine. Under Joseph's leadership, Egypt stored vast amounts of grain during the 7 years of abundance, creating reserves that would sustain the population during the years of scarcity. His planning and foresight not only saved Egypt, but also preserved neighboring nations from starvation.
Joseph's rise was a fulfillment of the dreams he had shared as a boy, dreams that once caused jealousy and strife within his family. What had begun with betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment was now a proof of God's plan. It showed that patience, faith, and integrity can lead to unimaginable triumph. Through Joseph's story, we see that even the darkest trials can become the stepping stones to destiny when guided by faith and obedience to God. Then it happened that as the 7 years of abundance came to an end, there was severe famine across all nations, but the land of Egypt had plenty of food. And soon the famine hit the land of Egypt. The people were famished, and they cried out to Pharaoh for food. Pharaoh told them to go to Joseph and do whatever he commands them to do. It happened that there was severe famine in Egypt, its surrounding nations, and across all countries, just as Joseph has predicted. And when the famine was widespread across all nations, Joseph opened the storehouses and sold food to the Egyptians. So people of other countries learnt that there was food in the land of Egypt, so they traveled to Egypt to buy grain and obtain food. When the famine struck the land of Canaan, Joseph's brothers traveled to Egypt, just like people of other countries went to Egypt to buy grain. However, they were unaware that the man they had once betrayed was now the ruler over the land. Joseph recognized them immediately, but they did not recognize him. Instead of seeking revenge, Joseph tested their hearts, ensuring they had changed. He sent them back with food and secretly returned their money, observing how they acted and demonstrating patience and wisdom. Finally, Joseph revealed his identity to his brothers, saying, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt." Shock and fear turned to awe as they realized God's plan had unfolded through all their actions, even the betrayal that had once seemed cruel. Joseph forgave his brothers, saying, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." The family was reunited, restored, and Joseph's faith and integrity had brought not only personal vindication, but salvation for his family and many nations. Joseph's story is a powerful story that shows the importance of faith, patience, and trusting God's plan. From being betrayed by his brothers and sold into slavery, to unjust imprisonment, and finally rising to become Pharaoh's right-hand man, every trial Joseph faced was part of a greater purpose.
His journey teaches us that even in the darkest moments, God's guidance never fails. What seems like defeat can become the pathway to destiny, and faithfulness in small things can lead to extraordinary outcomes. If Joseph's story inspired you, make sure to like this video and share it with friends and family. Comment below with your favorite moment of Joseph's journey. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe to Bizarre Tales and History Documentaries for more incredible Bible stories brought to life. And if you'd like to support our channel and help us continue creating content, check out our Buy Me a Coffee link in the description. Every contribution helps us share these timeless stories with the world. Thank you for watching, and remember, faith, integrity, and trust in God's plan can turn trials into triumphs and dreams into reality.